Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Algebra II just-in-time presentation this evening. This is Mike Traylor with the Office of Student Assessment at the Virginia Department of Education. Tina Mazzacane, the K-12 Mathematics Coordinator, is also joining us from the Office of STEM and Innovation at the Virginia Department of Education. Before we begin tonight, I would like to go over a few logistics with all of you. All participants have been muted, and individual videos have been disabled for this presentation. Should you have any questions, we would like for you to submit your questions through the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. If you will take a quick second and please hover near the bottom of the shared screen and you will see the Q&A icon. BDOE staff will be monitoring the Q&A and will respond to your questions throughout the entire webinar. The Algebra II just-in-time PowerPoint and a recorded version of this webinar will be posted soon on the Just-in-Time webpage. Many of the quick checks for Algebra II have already been posted to the Just-in-Time webpage. Various links will be shared with all of you at specific times during this presentation. All links that we share will be through the chat feature, which is also found at the bottom of the screen. When accessing the link in the chat feature, please make sure you download the document so that you can view any of the graphics that are contained within it. We are aware that you will probably have many questions regarding the quick checks during the presentation. Our presenters will be sharing ideas for the use of quick checks regarding planning, identifying supporting SOL, formative assessment, and pre-assessment. Since many of you are teaching virtually or in a blended environment or in a hybrid model this year, the presenters will be offering ideas for how these quick checks can be used in a virtual environment. Stay tuned, and our presenters will share these great ideas with all of you. Just-in-time mathematics quick checks are formative assessments that align to the 2016 Mathematics Standards of Learning. These resources, developed by Virginia teachers and mathematics leaders, are designed to help teachers identify students with unfinished learning and assist in planning instruction to fill potential gaps just in time. Our guest facilitators and leaders who are instrumental in this work will facilitate the session today and provide additional information about the just-in-time quick checks and their potential use in the classroom. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce our presenters tonight. We have Dr. Angela Bird Wright. Dr. Wright is the mathematics curriculum leader for Hampton City Schools. Beginning her 17th year as an educator, Dr. Bird Wright has worked in Hampton City Schools for 10 years, serving as a math coach and a middle school principal. She worked as a division secondary mathematics teacher specialist before becoming the mathematics curriculum leader. She's also been a principal with Franklin City Public Schools, an assistant principal in Gloucester County, and taught secondary mathematics in Newport News. She was recently a co-presenter for the Ed Equity Virginia Department of Education webinar series on the COVID-19 slide, sharing strategies on how to mitigate learning loss in mathematics. We are also equally privileged to have Rebecca Hall. Rebecca Hall currently serves as the instructional liaison and as a mathematics teacher at Code RVA Regional High School, a blended learning school with a focus on computer science located in Richmond. Prior to serving at Code RVA, she worked for Chesterfield County Public Schools as a high school mathematics teacher and then as the interim instructional specialist in the secondary mathematics office. She recently served on the BDOE Continuity for Learning Task Force and helped with the content acquisition for the Go Open Virginia initiative. It is my privilege to turn this presentation over to both of them, and they are going to share a lot of great strategies with you and understand how to use the quick checks. So ladies, if you will take it away.
Thank you so much, Mike, and welcome to each and every one of you this evening. We greatly appreciate your time, and we know that you're going to find the just-in-time quick checks that have now been developed for Algebra II to really make a difference in your planning and instruction and some of your instructional decisions that you'll make moving forward with your students. So for tonight, our agenda, we're first going to go back in time a little bit and talk about the Recover, Redesign, Restart 2020 plan, when to use quick checks, the components of a quick check, how to use the quick checks, using quick checks in a virtual environment, because as we know, it's almost like a potpourri, if you will, of where we are and where we're sitting here in the state of Virginia. And so we've got some sort of virtual elements going on. And so we're going to explore a couple possibilities that you can think about moving forward with the just-in-time quick checks. We're going to talk about your quick check availability and some additional resources that will be provided by the Virginia Department of Education. And just as a reminder, any questions that you have can be added in that Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. So we'll give you about 10 seconds to locate that. Again, please submit your questions, and throughout tonight's presentation, members of the team will be addressing those. Okay, so let's go back in time a little bit to June 9th of 2020, when Governor Northam announced a phased reopening plan for our Virginia schools. And during this said press conference, Dr. Lane, our superintendent of schools, shared the guidance document, Recover, Redesign, Restart 2020. And I'm sure many of you all are used to this document, have used this, excuse me, as the template for a lot of your work in your respective school divisions about planning and preparing for instruction. But we pulled out some key elements here in the presentation to share with you because it's so timely. One of the key components of the guidance document was as follows: assessment should not be interpreted to mean a testing event, but rather a process of data collection that's ongoing, that's formative, and low or to no stakes. And that assessments should include just-in-time formative assessments that inform immediate instructional needs. Next slide. So from there, the mathematics staff from the Office of Student Assessment, the Office of STEM and Innovation at VDOE, and a host of mathematics teachers and leaders, more than 50 here in the Commonwealth, collaborated to develop the just-in-time quick checks aligned directly to that mandate to truly assist teachers in identifying students' unfinished learning while moving forward with the current content. So what is a quick check? It says it in its name. It's a quick check. And it's a resource that really includes 3 or more questions that are designed to reveal some common misconceptions, student errors that are addressed by the standard and bullet. And that's what's so great about these. And as we dig deeper into a few examples tonight, you're going to see that. So you're not just going to see A2.7, and that's that. It's A2.7A, B, C, D. It's down by the bullet because it's targeted, it's laser focused. You're also going to see with the common misconceptions, we could not identify all 15 or 10 of them. We really reduced it down, whittled it down to what are the most prevalent or pervasive misconceptions that students may encounter as they're working through the content. So you're going to see, as we show you some examples tonight, the top 3 really misconceptions that students may have were intertwined there, and you're going to see the debrief about that within those teacher notes, which are truly profound. I know Rebecca's going to go into a lot of detail with that when we get to that portion of tonight's professional development, but you're going to find that the quick checks really are very targeted and laser focused as we move forward. I'm going to turn it on back over to Rebecca at this time.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bird-Wright. All right, so with the quick checks, right, just moving right along, we have quick checks created for every standard and bullet from kindergarten through Algebra II. So the original project that we worked on through the summer, we did kindergarten through Algebra I. And then when Dr. Bird-Wright and I were doing the presentations for the 7 to Algebra I teachers late in the summer, the first question in chat was, where are these for geometry and Algebra II? So that was a common theme through the chat and the Q&A. So after we finished those presentations, the VDOE team put together another group of us to work on the quick checks to add in geometry and Algebra II. So what is nice about them is they all have the exact same format. They all look the same resources. So as an Algebra 2 teacher, you might also teach geometry or Algebra 1. You can go back and look at those. And when we start to look at the supporting and prerequisite SOLs, even back to 8th grade, they look the exact same. The format is the same. So that's really helpful to have these resources for all standards and bullets all the way from kindergarten to Algebra 2. Okay, so what are the quick checks going to do for us, right? So they're just-in-time instruction and using the quick checks. So they're going to help us re-engage students in prerequisite knowledge within the context of grade level learning, right? So it's really important to think about, we are Algebra 2 teachers. That is the content that we're teaching, but we can use these quick checks to re-engage them and remind them of some of the skills they might have learned back in Algebra 1, okay? They'll help us remain focused on the learning happening today, not just how we're going to catch up to students, right? And we're going to use that phrase just-in-time instruction versus just in case. And I'll go over those in a minute. Okay, the quick checks are also really useful to help identify gaps in essential learning. So as students are working through those questions, and like Dr. Bird-Wright said, they're laser focused. So it really helps you narrow in on the exact standard and skills that you're teaching, right? As we look at the results from those and student responses, it helps us identify gaps in their learning and what additional support specific students might need just in time to learn that content, right? So in the moment, you're realizing, oh, I need to just review this one skill for them in order to move them forward, okay? So we're gonna respond in real time to student needs. So really focusing on the student there and what they need to be successful moving forward with our current grade level content. Okay, so here's an example to kind of help you wrap your brain around just in case versus just in time instruction. Okay, so here we're using SOL A2.1b. So the student will add, subtract, multiply, divide, and simplify radical expressions, right? So we're focusing on that radical expressions piece. So just in case, an example of just in case instruction would be if Mrs. Jones includes a reteaching lesson on simplifying numerical square roots, right? So that's an Algebra 1 standard. So she uses her whole class period to teach an Algebra 1 standard, right? Her students may or may not have needed that, right? Where is the data to show my students need to review this concept before moving forward, right? So there might have been students who didn't need to sit through a whole lesson for a whole class period on that, right? So our time is so valuable. I know you know that too as classroom teachers, like every minute counts in this virtual world. Things take longer virtually than they do in person. So you want to make sure that the time you have, you're using for what students need. You're not doing things just in case they might need it. Okay, so the counterexample to that, the just-in-time example, right, is when this example, Mrs. Rodriguez identifies the students, right? So again, focusing on the students and their needs who have unfinished learning by implementing a quick check of content from SOL A.3a and A.3b prior to simplifying and through algebraic expressions, right? So before doing the Algebra 2 content, right, she's using a quick check from Algebra 1, okay? So that quick check, 10 minutes of class time, right? It quickly allows her to identify what students might need additional support, what examples she might want to go over with the class, what scaffolding is needed, really helps drive her instruction and provides that intentional planning that she needs to move forward, right? So instead of just, everybody needs this just in case, right? This just-in-time instruction allows us to really use that data to drive what do students need and their understanding to move forward with their grade level content. Okay, and you might be wondering, how do I know? I've never taught algebra. How do I know that it's A3A and B? Like I know they do this in algebra, but what standard is it? Right? All of that is in the quick check, right? Because they're designed for this purpose. So within the quick check, when we go over the components, you'll see that the supporting and prerequisite SOLs are listed and linked to their quick check, so you can easily access that information. Okay, so where are these amazing resources? right? So they are on the VDOE website, right? So you can go to both the mathematics instruction page or the mathematics standards of learning and testing page, right? Within there, there's a link directly to the just-in-time mathematics quick checks, right? So they're live and available now. Okay, and at the top of the page, you'll see a banner, right, that lists all the grade levels. Again, kindergarten through Algebra 2, right? When we're finished with this video, there'll be a recording there of the professional development resources so you can share with your colleagues and any other information listed there for you. Okay, so you're going to click on Algebra 2 as an Algebra 2 teacher, right? Because we focus on that grade level we're teaching, the content that we are teaching. Okay, and I clicked on the link. Sorry, didn't mean to do it. It's a live link in the presentation. Surprise. All right, so let me click on just the slide. All right, so it'll take you to grade level standards, right? So here you can see the strands for Algebra 2, right? And you can see each bullet is identified there. So for A2.1, there's a quick check for A, B, and C. So every bullet has its own quick check. Okay, and then the ones that are in red, those are already hyperlinked, ready to go. They're underlined. You can click on them. And there's the Word version and the PDF. Okay. And then the ones that you see that are not yet underlined, that are in black text, those are not yet available, right? So they're coming soon. Okay. So we started this project just in October, so it hasn't been long. So as they're finishing up and revising and posting those final couple of quick checks out there. So you'll be able to see the rest of them soon. Okay, so how would we use quick checks, right? So we're going to use them as a teacher. I'm also a teacher, right? So how are we going to use these in our classroom? They're going to help us identify and access the supporting prerequisite SOLs that are necessary for current learning, right? So I mentioned that already when we go back to like that A3 example, okay? We're going to use them to help consider the most common student errors and misconceptions. And again, we really try to focus in on the most common errors and also errors that are more geared towards Algebra 2, right? Sometimes students might make a computational error. We didn't try to highlight those errors, right? We really try to focus on what might be impacting their understanding of the Algebra 2 content, okay? And you can use them when you're planning new instruction, okay? And then they're also gonna help us not only assess prior knowledge, right? But the quick checks are on grade level. They are grade level questions. They are Algebra 2 questions for the content you are teaching. So you can use the quick check to quickly, as a formative assessment for their grade level standards, right? So as you're teaching an Algebra 2 concept, you can use the corresponding quick check right within your classroom. Okay, and then they also provide links to all of the supporting resources. Now it'll be really helpful. We show you an example and you can see all that the resources that are included in this one document. Okay, and how not to use quick checks, right? So quick checks were not intended, right, to be used as a pre-assessment for a unit or the course, right? They're used for in-time learning, right? Not at the beginning, just in case everybody needs to take this pre-assessment, let's see. No, we're going to use them in the moment to help us refine our instruction. Okay, they're not a practice SOL test, and they are not written like SOL questions, right? They're open-ended. They're explain your thinking. They're show your thinking questions. Okay, so we really want to understand what the students are thinking and where that breakdown might be in their understanding. So we don't just want multiple choice questions for that. Okay, they're definitely not going to be a packet for independent learning. So you're not going to give about a bunch of copies or post them on your learning management system, because that kind of gets away from the whole point, right? So the whole point here is the feedback, right? The feedback for you as a teacher just in time to help you make those key instructional decisions to move students forward, but also for the students, right? To know, yeah, I did remember that concept from Algebra 1. That's awesome. Or, oh, I did understand what we worked on yesterday. Okay, so the feedback is for the students and for you. So we want to use them in the moment, not just as a packet to go work on. Right, we've already talked about their formative, right? So they're not going to be for grade or quiz or anything like that. You're going to use them built into your instruction, right? To help make decisions and help kind of really know where the students are, going back to that student focus. And then we wouldn't use them to determine course placement, certainly. Okay. All right, so I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Bird Wright, and she's going to go over a full quick check with you.
All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And so what has just been dropped in the chat box by the team, you're going to see the quick check for A2.3. So you're going to see that has already been loaded into the chat box. So you want to make sure that you've downloaded that so you can follow along. That's A2.3B. And so the PDF version as well as I believe the Word document will also be dropped in there. But you've got the link so you can follow right on along with me. So let's talk about the components of a quick check. Each quick check is going to contain links to the curriculum framework. The questions are designed to reveal those possible, again, student errors and misconceptions. You're going to see teacher notes, which are so very powerful. And you're going to see that on the latter portion of this presentation tonight. And Rebecca can certainly attest to this, that the teacher notes were the hardest part of this entire process when writing the questions. In fact, really starting from the teacher notes first to determine how we would actually craft and create questions for the student portion of the quick check, which you will see. Supporting resources, as well as supporting and prerequisite SOLs. So now as we look at the quick check, as Rebecca stated earlier, all of our just-in-time quick checks look the very same. So that formatting is great. And that's a good thing because as you may have to spiral back or to stay within the current content, the navigation piece will be the same. You'll know what each of those components are going to look like. But each component offers a really unique element of support to the content of the standard. So we're going to continue to move forward to see what those components are. First, at the top of any quick chat, you're going to see the link to the curriculum framework. So here and again, you're not having to have 3 and 4 different documents up where you're just able to simply click on that active link and it'll take you to the math curriculum framework for Algebra 2. Next, you're going to see the strand, the standard, and the bullets. And so the strand of focus that we're looking at for this particular quick check is with equations and inequalities. And we're going to be focusing in on the standard of learning of A2.3b, where the student will solve quadratic equations over the set of complex numbers. And so then it delves into what does that entail? Solving a quadratic equation over the set of complex numbers algebraically, calculating the discriminant, solving equations, and verifying algebraic solutions using a graphing utility. So there's all different things right there to let you know specifically what's in alignment with the curriculum framework. Next, you're going to see 2 bookmarked areas. The just-in-time quick check, that first link will directly drop you down to the student portion of the just-in-time quick check. The second link will take you to the teacher notes that go into great detail about the common errors, what it may indicate, and then some ways to mitigate or some mitigation strategies. I know we've heard that word mitigation strategy. Well, this is another way to mitigate some of those misconceptions as you're moving forward with student learning. Then you'll see the supporting resources. This could include your math instructional plans. And in this case, you'll see both the Word and PDF version. And for this particular example, it would be the word wall cards. And it's not just the link to the word wall cards, but specifically what's involved with that particular content of that standard. So here, as we're looking at this particular standard, you're going to see complex numbers examples, and the quadratic equation or number of solutions. But also you may see supporting Desmos activities, or you might see eMedia VA or WHRO videos that are also embedded into those supporting resources, many of which come directly from the Virginia Department of Education to support the work that you're doing currently as you deliver instruction. And this again is a powerful tool here. The prerequisites or those supporting SOLs. In most cases, you may see that the standards here may go back just one content area. But in here with Algebra 2, as many of us may have our course outlines being Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, you're going to see that those prerequisites will actually go to Algebra 1, but you'll also see possibly some 8th grade standards there as well. But the good thing about it, it's already hyperlinked. So you're not having to go back to the website, try to find the just-in-time quick check. It's already linked for you. And if you were to even use that right now from the downloaded A2.3b, you're going to be able to click on those prerequisite standards that are foundational or to the work of that vertical articulation piece. And speaking of vertical articulation, the MVAT tool, and many of you all are aware of that, it was also used to help to create that curriculum mapping so that you could see what those supporting and prerequisite SOLs are. So there are many uses for the quick checks. We've got 4 fine scenarios to share with you tonight. Of course, there could be many more, but of course, most of the time, when we're getting ready to implement instruction, it starts with what? The planning process. So we're going to start there with planning, okay? So many of you are probably involved in some way, shape, or form in a collaborative learning team, or maybe even a grade level team or an academy. And so you might be planning, you might be just like this group of teachers we're going to share in this scenario, planning together to teach the standard of learning of A2.3b. And so this group of teachers, they're in their collaborative team and they've accessed the quick check for A2.3b on the DOE website, just like Rebecca told them to do when they came to the presentation tonight. And so the quick check will provide them with quick access to the skills and the knowledge that the students are expected to know in Algebra 2, as well as provide some background information for previous grade levels for this group of Algebra 2 teachers. So in doing, they look at the just-in-time quick check, they access and know, okay, we're looking at the particular strand of equations and inequalities, and now I'm looking at not only that, but the standard, and then those sub-bullets or those bullets to know specifically where I'm going to target instruction. And the great thing about these quick checks is that for each of those sub-bullets there that you see, there is a question that is directly tied to it. So next, they're able to sit back and determine, well, what should students have learned at some previous grade levels? I'm sure you've had those conversations in your own curriculum teams. And so the teachers decide to look at the prerequisite skills, and they look at A.4b. And in so doing, they know that that particular standard really relates to solving quadratic equations in one variable algebraically. So the teachers decide they're going to review those types of questions with the students just to understand what they should have known in this particular content. So next, that's a great segue into identifying the supporting SOLs from prior grade levels. So that's scenario 2. So we're going to move and talk about Mrs. Lovings. Well, Mrs. Loving, she's teaching A2.3b2, and she notices that some of her students are consistently demonstrating errors or misconceptions in their understanding. So she decides to access the quick check of that A.4b to determine and identify some unfinished learning for these students. So you're going to notice in not only this scenario, but moving forward as Rebecca takes over for scenarios 3 and 4, that you don't have to use the entirety of the quick check. Again, it's so targeted and laser focused that you can really say, I'm going to just select a question or a question or two to really target where I'm truly seeing where students are having errors or misconceptions. In this particular scenario that we're going to look at here, Mrs. Lovings decides to lovingly use question number 1 with her students that are continually incorrectly identifying both solutions to the quadratic equations. So let's take a look at that question. So look at this question here. We have Emily and Andrea, and they solved the given equation, quadratic equation, in different ways and got different answers. I'm sure that never happens in classes, right? Never happens. And so we're now doing an error analysis with this particular equation, particular question. But here's what's great about the quick checks. They're open-ended. And so here, not only are you being able to ascertain whether the students understand how to solve the given quadratic equation, but to really delve deep into what are those misconceptions or common errors, even in computation, that students can have, and they're having to explain the mistake and how to correct it. That's a powerful question there. So you're understanding the students' thinking, and then how can they correct the error of whomever they select had the incorrect response. So in this case, Mrs. Loving is able to see how students are attempting to solve the given equation and how they're determining their solutions. And so you'll notice there's a pattern here. She's able to determine what the concern is, but then what it indicates. And in this instance, some students may not understand that the solution indicates both a positive and a negative square root of 9. I'm sure you've run into that situation before. So Mrs. Loving would then support the students by having them use a different method to compare solutions, or even graphing their solution using the Desmos graphing calculator. I'm going to turn it back over to Rebecca.
Thank you. All right, so for scenario 3, right, we're going to talk about how you might use a quick check for formative assessment. Right, so here it is, Mr. Sellers, right, provided instruction in A2.3b yesterday, okay, where students explored how the discriminant relates to the number and type of solution. Right, so the next day, he wants to do a quick warm-up activity to see if the students understand those relationships and are ready to move forward. Right, so we all do warm-ups, right? But you can use these quick check resources to help you select appropriate warm-up questions to guide your instruction, right? So he accesses the quick check, right? And again, he just selects questions 4 and 5 for the warm-up activities. You don't have to do the entire quick check at once. You can pick and choose the questions that meet your needs. Okay, so question 4 on the quick check, right? The value of the discriminant of a quadratic equation is -7. Describe the nature of the roots. Okay, so as he reviews his student responses, right, he'll immediately know which students might need additional time or support to further develop their understanding of discriminant and which students are ready to move forward, right? And the responses will help him also identify our students identifying both the number and type of solutions or roots. Okay. And then he might also choose question 5, right, which is another error analysis question, right? So Donnell and Susan are trying to determine the number and type of solutions, right, by using the discriminant. So their work is shown and describe and correct the errors made, right? So as he's reviewing student work to this question, right, he's able to again, use that real-time information just in time to kind of guide what he's going to do next within his lesson, right? He'll know which students can correctly simplify the discriminant, right? So as he's moving into solving the quadratic formula, he'll know who's ready for that, right? And he'll also know maybe I need to provide a few extra examples for certain students as they work on practicing simplifying the discriminant before moving forward with the quadratic formula. So that information that he gets from this quick check, right, that formative information can help him make decisions about what to do moving forward with his students to help them in the moment with their current learning. Okay, and then you can choose to use some quick check questions as like an ISA ticket, right, at the end of a lesson. Okay, so he might choose questions 3 and 6 after he's worked on quadratic formula to kind of see how students are doing with those concepts. So here's another question from the quick check. Okay. What are the roots to the given equation? Show your work and thinking. So again, we're not just getting a quick solution, we're solving and identifying how we found that solution, right? And the set of responses that students do for this one as he's reviewing their work will help identify, Can they set up the quadratic formula correctly? Are they simplifying correctly? Are they simplifying their solutions? Right? All of those little pieces of information will help him know where to move next, right? Who's ready and what scaffolding does he need to incorporate, or what should he work on the next day he meets his students, right? Again, our time with students is so valuable, especially this year. So you really want to use that time wisely and have the data to kind of what do your students need as you move forward. All right, and then here's another question, right? That he might use at the end of the lesson, a quadratic equation with real coefficients, right? It has a solution x equals, you can read it as one solution. So what's the other solution? Right? So again, these responses from students will help him recognize, can students identify both solutions, right? It might relate back to that warm-up activity about the discriminant, like kind of in complex solutions, kind of making all those connections as he's going through this question with students. Okay. Okay, and then the other questions, and again, that's why I really like the quick check, especially those Word documents, because you can pick and choose. The other questions might not be appropriate in that moment, right? So it's just in time. It's what do students need today? So you don't have to use all of the questions. So this one where you're finding the solutions, right? He might save that question till they're kind of doing a mixed practice, right? Where you're trying to solve using the most efficient method, right? Or this one, right? It's a different form, right? So given various forms. So just kind of when is the right time for each question for your students to see that question and for you to get that input on how they're doing and where they are with their learning. Okay, none of those again are graded, right? It's just formative, build it right into your regular instruction as you're already planning a warm up or an exit ticket. Okay, and the other way, our final scenario, and again, these are just 4 scenarios. There's certainly other ways you might plan to use these, is for pre-assessment. Okay, so in this situation, Mrs. Byers is concerned that students may have gaps in prior learning. So she knows she's going to do A2.3b, right? But she wants to kind of see where they are with their prior knowledge of quadratics, right? So as a bell ringer, as a warm-up, she picks 2 questions from the prior, right? Quick check, A.4b. So it's not the grade level quick check. She's just going back to kind of assess where are they with what they already know and help activate that prior knowledge, right? So here are the 2 questions she might use, right? So what are the solutions? So this is an Algebra 1 question, okay? But she can use the responses to this to see which students remember how to set up a quadratic and are solving correctly, right? Maybe even which students remember to subtract the 4 on both sides to set it equal to 0. Like what pieces of this do students already know? So I can build on that moving forward. Okay, and then another question, right, that she might use, question 3, again, from the algebra quick check, to determine if students can factor, right, setting each factor equal to 0 to find the solutions. So helping those students maybe make some connections. And as she goes over these questions, right, students are then activating that prior knowledge and making connections to what they're going to do in Algebra 2 to what they did in Algebra 1. So helping kind of build that continuity for them of their learning. Okay, so she's using the quick check as a pre-assessment, right? Just to gauge their background knowledge as she's introducing the grade level content, right? She's not reteaching all of A.4b, she's just using that to help move forward. And in a short amount of time, she knows what students do and do not remember, which students remember information, so she can use that moving forward. Okay, so those are the 4 scenarios. And again, there may be other uses you might find as you dig in and start using these quick check questions. Okay, we're also going to take a minute to just look at the teacher notes. Right? And Dr. Bird-Wright made mention of this before. So this is the second part, right, of each quick check. And it's bookmarked right there for you. So you can click on the link right on that first page, and it'll take you to the question and the teacher note. So within each teacher note, right, it might include 1 common error. And again, there may be multiple errors, but we picked what we felt was the most common. And then also suggestions for helping students moving forward. Okay. So here's an example of one question, right? Question 1 on the A2.3b, find the solutions to the equation, right? So common error. So the first sentence generally identifies the common error. Common error some students may make is to only find the positive, right, imaginary solution when solving. Certainly, okay, we're gonna see students do that. So then the second sentence will tell us what that indicates about student understanding. Right? So it may indicate that a student does not understand that a quadratic equation has 2 solutions. Okay, and then the rest of the teacher note will provide potential ways to scaffold for students, instructional ideas, things that might be beneficial for students and teachers to do to help students who have that misunderstanding. Right, so those teacher notes are clear to every different teacher note. We really go back to what the error was and how can we help students with that error. Okay, so teachers may wish to model solving the equation with the quadratic formula. It may be beneficial for teachers to review simplifying square roots involving imaginary numbers to help students correctly find the 2 solutions. Or teachers could also have students compare the solutions, okay, by graphing and solving algebraically. Okay, so just giving students opportunity to, teachers opportunity to have choices, right? So I know my students are making this mistake. Well, how do I help them overcome that? And then there'd be some ideas within the teacher note to help you with that. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to talk about is how we might use all of these quick checks in a virtual setting. Right, so many of us are fully virtual. We're my school, we're fully virtual. And other schools, right, you might have some hybrid situations going on. So how could you use these when you don't have all students with you all the time? Right, so one way, right, is to have students do their work and submit it in your school division's learning management system. So whether that's Canvas or Schoology or Google Classroom, whatever you use, right, you can pick and choose what quick check questions you want to assign them, maybe as an exit ticket, right? Do these 2 questions before the end of our class period today and upload a picture of your work, right? And it's really important to see that work, right, what their thinking is, because that'll help us identify where their understanding is, okay? And as students are uploading a picture of their work, if you haven't done that with students yet, you'll have to train them on how to hold their paper correctly so they can get their full picture in there, right? I love when some of my students like to smile with their picture, which again, as a high school teacher with many students who do not want to turn their camera on, it is wonderful to see their smiling faces, right? But also at that time, I'm like, I want to see your math work, right? Smile for me later. So making sure you kind of train them on what that submission should look like, okay? Another way, right in the middle of a synchronous session. So you're in a Google Meet or a Zoom session with students, right? You can post the question on your shared screen, right? So if you're using a slide deck or maybe Nearpod or Pear Deck or whatever you're using to present information to your students, right? They can do their work on paper, right? Or a small whiteboard and they can hold that up, right? So if they don't have access, they can just do their work and hold it up so you can quickly see where they are with their understanding. Right, and then that could always drive into that discussion of, oh, I noticed Mike did this and this is what he got. And I noticed Tina did that. Who's correct? Why are they correct? Are they both correct? And they just did their, solve their equation differently, right? So kind of being able to have those same conversations we're used to in person, right? In a virtual environment by having students show their work right in the moment. Okay, another way you might consider using quick checks is through Flipgrid, right? And Flipgrid is free. You create your account and then students can go in with the link and make a quick video, right? So I really have grown to love Flipgrid even more than I did before now that we're virtual, because it's a great way to hear the students talk, right? If your students are like mine, they don't always love to unmute and answer aloud in a virtual setting, but they will make a good Flipgrid video for me of them talking nonstop. So I love that I get to hear them and hear them talking about math, right? So you might assign them 2 or 3 questions, work through these questions and explain to me what you did on the Flipgrid video, right? Or teach the concept to someone else, right? Do the problem as if you were the teacher so I can understand your thinking, Okay, so using Flipgrid is a great way to kind of get into students' brains and hear them talk about math and understand where they are. Okay, then you might also consider using Google Jamboard, right? If your school division allows that. It's a free interactive whiteboard. Okay, so you might load the questions into Jamboard in advance, and then students, you can share the link with students so they can all edit it, right? Or only some students can edit it, and they can do their work right there so everybody can see in real time the work. It's kind of like going to the board. That's what I relate it to when we do it in my classroom. Like, it's kind of, if we were in the building, I would have you go to the board and do your work on the board. Now you're just going to do your work on your Jamboard so we can see everybody's work or see one specific student do a problem, depending on how you want to set that up. Students can use the pen tool. They can type in there. There's sticky notes. There's different colors. So it is a nice way. And there's also a graph, right? This would be really helpful in Algebra 2. You can set it up with a graph background so they can sketch their graphs right there for you. So you might want to check that out if you have access to that as a way to use some of these quick checks in a virtual environment. Okay, and then the last way, which we're going to spend a little bit more time on, is doing a Desmos activity builder, right? So with Desmos, right, if you haven't used Desmos before, first you'll want to create a teacher account, right? So you'd go to teacher.desmos.com to create a teacher account. Okay, I'm going to reshare my screen here. I think. Escape that. Okay, I got it. Maybe. You tell me if I'm there. Yes, okay. I think I'm there. All right, so you would go to teacher.desmos.com to create your own account. Right now, as a student, right, students go to student.desmos.com. Okay, and the link should be in the chat so you can get the direct link, right? So you can go directly in as a student to the activity. Okay, on the teacher dashboard, let me show you real quick. Okay, maybe. Right, you have the opportunity to assign a one-time code, which is what I did here, right? But you can also assign to your classes. So if you've set up classes, so we did that at the beginning of the year. So all my students, they don't have to put in a code every time. They just log in with Google, right? They go to student.desmos.com, log in with Google, and I will assign it to the specific class that I want to do that activity. So it saves that extra step of needing a link or a code. And you can also set them up with Google Classroom, if that's what your division uses. Okay, so we're in, I see there's 5 students in so far. Right, and I'm going to click View Dashboard. Okay, oh, we're up to 7. Okay, and you can always, some of the features in Desmos, just in case you haven't used it before, right, is you can anonymize, which is awesome to then also learn something about some of these famous mathematicians. One day in a Desmos activity, we got who is this person? I don't understand. So we stopped the whole activity and everybody Googled their person. So we got to learn a little bit about the different famous mathematicians that were listed, which was a nice little break. And the students got into it, trying to figure out whose was, the oldest, whose was the smartest, and all those things. And then there's pacing, right? So pacing provides, right now you're paced, so you can only see the first question. And I generally do that at the beginning of any Desmos activity. So my students, if I'm doing it with them, right, in a virtual setting, but they don't go through the whole activity at the beginning, right? You can also assign these for them to work on independently, right? And then you can see the results and provide feedback, okay? And then there's also the pause button, right? And I always warn them before I pause them. I'll say, okay, I'm gonna pause you in a minute. I'll count them down, 3, 2, 1 before I pause, because then it locks their screen. Right, they can't do anything, which can be frustrating to them if they're in the middle, like ready to answer something, and then it's paused on them. So if you haven't used Desmos, those tools really help in that virtual environment. Right, so I'm going to unpace you so you can stop pacing. So I just click whoops, click stop pacing. So you can click through and see the 4 questions. Right, so on my screen, I can see as you click through, these are 4 questions from the A2.8 quick check, right? So we used a different example here just so you could see, right? So students are entering responses, right? I can have a class discussion about that. I can pause everybody and say, okay, the graph was provided for you and what's the equation, right? So we might compare different formats of equations, right? How did people write their equations? So that's a great kind of tool there, right? We have addressed, is it an equation? If it doesn't say y equals or f of x equals, like even some of those things would be good. Okay, if I look at question 2, right? What are the apparent zeros of the function, right? And I can always go click as a student, so my screen looks like their screen. So oftentimes I'll do that at the beginning and kind of show them what they're doing. Okay, so what are the apparent zeros? So then I would look for see what type of list students have. When I click on teacher moves, that is the teacher node, right? So it's right there. I can see that on my dashboard, so I can use that information to make some comments on to what students are doing and maybe see like, oh, they keep making this error. Oh, good, that's a common error. It's not just my students. Like this is a common thing students are doing. What could I do to help them? Okay. And again, right, it's 4 questions, right? Our quick checks were purposely designed to be quick, right? So there's a question that kind of identifies each little sub bullet within the standard and different forms of the question, right? Some they gave you the graph, some you don't have a graph, right? Some you're going to draw on the graph, all those different ways. So different ways to work with the content. Okay. And so you can use your teacher dashboard to kind of keep track of the students' work and what students have answered. You can use the student format to kind of model for students what they might be doing. And when I go to teacher, I can also pick a student's work to showcase, right, and share someone's screen. So this person is starting to plot their points, right, to sketch their function. And then also a new feature, right, depending on when the last time you've used Desmos is they have added a feedback component, right? So if I'm here, where was that? Let me just pick this person just for an example, right? This little chat message right here, I can send immediate feedback, right? So I can send a note that says, great job, or I can send a note that says, maybe you need to think about blank, right? So you can do that live, right? As students are working, you can be giving them feedback in the moment and only that student's getting the feedback, which I do like. So it's one-on-one conversation. Or if they're doing the quick check in advance and you're going back later to go over it, you might add the feedback later, right? And so I'm just gonna say, great work, even though, okay? Just so you can see that. So then when I go to the summary screen, I can see here there's that little tiny triangle, right? When it's green, that means they haven't read it yet. And now that it's gray, I know she's opened or he's opened that comment, right? So there's a lot of features within Desmos, not just for the quick checks, right? But to use in our virtual learning environment, okay? So I think there is a link out there that we will share of quick checks that have been, or Desmos quick checks that have been created for all of the kindergarten through Algebra 1 standards. And I think the VDOE team can correct me if I'm wrong, it's in the works, right? To work on creating quick checks for geometry and Algebra 2, like putting those quick checks into Desmos activities to save you some time from that. So I think that that's in the works. And then they'll be coming out eventually. First, we got to finish all the quick checks and all that, but we can hopefully create some of these so that way you can just go and access it already in Desmos instead of having to create your own. Okay. All right, so I'll turn things over, I think, to the VDOE team and they will finish this up.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Angela. Wonderful job. Always a pleasure to hear. And I always learn something new every time I listen to you about how to use the quick checks. And Rebecca, just to verify your information, we are working to go ahead and put together the quick checks in Desmos activities for geometry and Algebra 2. That work won't probably start until the new year, but we'll keep the field informed about those. But thank you for mentioning that. And as the ladies mentioned too, we are still working and on finalizing some of the quick checks to upload into the VDOE website. And so over the next several weeks, we'll be finishing up that work and getting those loaded onto the website. So we wanted to just let you know that there is an opportunity for you to join a users group. We are looking for mathematics teachers throughout Virginia who may be interested in participating in 4 different webinars throughout the school year. It would start in January. And you would agree to use the quick checks with your students throughout the year and then complete some feedback forms based on the experience you have. And you could receive a stipend if you're interested in doing some of this work. There is a link, and we've put it in the chat box for you to go ahead and give us your interest information if that's something you'd like to do. And we would contact you with further information about that. So on the next slide, we do want to recognize all the different folks from the different divisions that have helped us in putting these quick checks together. Both Rebecca and Angela really talked about how challenging it was to create some of those teacher notes and how much work and refinement it took to really make these something that's quite usable for our teachers. So we had folks from all over the state. Those that are highlighted and have the, or that are bolded and have the little gold star are those divisions that particularly helped with the geometry and the Algebra II quick checks. Again, we're very appreciative of all that work. It was hours and hours of work, but we think that it's been very fruitful for the field to have this resource. So we do have a few links to some other resources that might be of assistance to you in addressing unfinished learning. There's 3 different resources that we've noted here, and you'll have access to this presentation where you'll be able to click on those links. But we know that it's been particularly challenging to think about some of the learning loss that students might have and how you can address that. So some of these resources might be of assistance to you with that. So we wanted to give you our contact information. The Office of Student Assessment, their email address is on the top, and the Office of STEM and Innovation, that's the office I work in, is the email address on the bottom. Feel free to email us with your questions. We're always happy to hear from you, teachers, the boots on the ground folks that keep us grounded in our work and really the purpose that we're here. So we are so excited that we have these resources to share with you. If you have any other questions or anything that you'd like to share with us in the chat, we'll hang around for a few minutes. But Mike, if you want to kind of join back in and let me know if there's anything else that you need to share.
No, I think you covered everything, Tina. Thank you. I want to thank everyone, all the participants tonight, to take some time out of your evening and join us. And a special thank you to Angela and Rebecca for providing such a professional providing professional development for all of us, for the teachers, for mathematics educators. And I will echo what Tina said. We continue to learn from the 2 of you whenever you do these presentations. So always when I think I have it down, there's always something new that I figure out. So thank you everyone for participating. And again, thank you, Angela and Rebecca. And as Tina said, we're gonna hang out here for a little while. If you wanna send us a question through the Q&A, we will gladly address that for you. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great evening and have a great rest of the week.